Hey, this is Blake with Transporter Trailer Sales. Today I'm going to do a quick walkthrough video on a 2025 AutoCAT Catalyst 858. This one is a ZR858 variant. They are going to be very similar between models, other than major differences between some models might be the shocks and the track, but we'll start with this one. Really nice thing about this chassis is how serviceable it is. So the first thing I'll show you is how to remove these panels and the hood itself. So there's 3 clickers, so one at the front, one at the back, and then one down below. If you turn these all straight, you can then pull the panel off to access either your clutch or your belt drive and muffler side. So if you pull the panel off, sometimes, I'll grab the phone here so I can show you. Sometimes when you take the 3 clickers off, so 1, 2, and then 3 at the back there, the bottom here will get stuck. So the easiest way to avoid that is if you just push in here and then pull out, the panel will become unclicked. It's going to be quite hard to do with one hand here, but there you go. So if you push in, it'll unclick, and then you can then remove the panel from the sled. At the bottom, there's tabs. So if you push them forward, then they will slide out and you can remove the panel entirely. So this is obviously going to be your clutch drive side. And then you have your coolant here. There's a cold minimum. So it's going to, or a cold maximum, I should say. So the coolant level on this one is good. You shouldn't have to pay much attention to that so long as you're not overheating the machine or you don't get a pick or something in your heat exchanger, in which case there will be a light displayed on your dash showing that your engine temperature is too hot. So like I say, this is your clutch side, secondary clutch, primary clutch. Your secondary clutch, there is a threaded spot here, which you get a tool provided with every machine that you can thread into that, and it will spread the sheaves on the clutch, allowing you to remove the belt and change it if you do need to change the belt. One thing to take note of, if you reverse your machine, let's say you back it into your garage and you try threading that tool into it, it will not spread the sheaves because the rollers in the secondary are caught on the notch that allows the machine to go in reverse. So if you back into your garage and you want to change your belt, just go forward on the machine an inch or two, and then that will make it so that your rollers are not stuck in that sheave, and then you can change the belt. Another thing to take note of here is that you'll notice the primary clutch is very, very close to the splash guard. So removing this belt is very hard. It is a little bit, or I should say it is possible to do, but you have to pry on this quite a bit. In that tool, you will see that the end has a Torx bit on it, so you can actually remove that screw up there, that one down there, and then there's about 2 or 3 underneath that you can take off, and that way you can get at it easier without having to pry on this panel and potentially damage it. Now we'll go to the other side and remove that panel to show you the process there. Very simple, so one at the front, one at the back, and then one down at the bottom at the front. Pull off at the front here, and then that side didn't get stuck. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Pull it forward and your panel is now disconnected from the machine. Now this side is going to be your belt drive, muffler, and injection oil. So the muffler is here. Really not much you got to worry about. Just springs hold it on, and then that's an exhaust temperature sensor. Now this is your injection oil. So the machine will burn oil as it runs. Being a 2-stroke, it injects oil into the crankcase and lubricates the motor. So this will go down over time. Make sure you keep up on that. If you run it dry, you will seize the motor because there's no lubrication in it. If your machine is running low on oil, there will be a light that displays on the dash telling you to put more oil in it. Only use AutoCAT C-Tech 2 synthetic oil in this. Do not use aftermarket stuff. It is the best. So yeah, keep that oil in mind and check it before you ride every time, because last thing you want to do is be on the trail with no oil and be stuck with a seized motor. Now, down here is your belt drive. This is one of the most fantastic things about the AutoCAT Catalyst chassis is that there's no more chain case. That means there's no more servicing it. You do not have to change oil every year. You don't have to flush it out. You don't have to worry about a chain. The other advantage is that there's so many less parts. You have a top pulley, a bottom pulley, and a belt. Nobody's ever broken one of these belts before, but it is possible that it happens. But it is very durable thus far. It's self-tensioning. You do not have to change it, or sorry, you do not have to tighten it in any way. It will tighten itself. If you do want to change the gearing, it certainly is possible. So that's that side. Now, I'll show you how to remove the hood. First step is these little half-turn fasteners. So if I just take it and turn it, it'll pull out. And then on this side, same thing. Turn it, pulls out. Now on this side, there's a connector. I had previously undone it before I started the video just because it would be very hard to undo with one hand, but it's an automotive style connector that will plug into here. And then there's a tab on the back. You push that, pull out, and now it's disconnected. Now this illuminates your light and your gauge on the machine. If you were to start it and this wasn't plugged in, the machine was not plugged in, excuse me, and the machine will start. You just won't have a gauge or a headlight. So if you ever start your machine and you have no gauge or headlight, check this because you probably forgot to plug it in. Now, the only other part to taking the hood off of this is this little 1/4 turn fastener just below the front bumper here. So I'm going to set up my phone again and I'll show you how to take it off. So all I'm gonna do is do a little quarter turn on this, pull up here, and now it's disconnected. So sometimes these sides will get stuck. Just pull out or push in on these, and you'll be able to then remove the hood. It's just that quarter turn fastener getting stuck on the clip inside. Now if I lift up on the hood and pull it straight out, the entire thing is now off. Another thing to take note of, spare belt loop right here, so you can put a belt in there if you do want to carry a spare one with you, which of course I always recommend, because you do not want to get stranded out on the trail. And if you do, you got a spare one there. Now you have access to the entire engine without any tools at all. So this is obviously your expansion chamber, exhaust temperature sensor. If you need to change your spark plugs, they're back there and they're very easy to get to with the wrench when you take the hood off. I will go over a couple common problems we've seen so far with them. These exhaust springs apparently do rattle, and at a certain RPM they can come close to the steering post and hit it, which will cause a pinging sound. So if that is the case, let us know and we'll obviously take care of it. A fix that some people have been doing is just putting high temperature silicone on the outside of the spring so it doesn't rattle quite as much, and if it hits that, it doesn't make nearly as much of a noise. Now this is your power valve bracket, and there's a power valve cable in there with a servo motor. So as you go up in RPM, being a two-stroke motor, there's valves in there that'll close and open and make it run more optimally at certain RPM. Now there has been some issues with this, and Arctic Cat released a bulletin about this. Sometimes these servo motors are not functioning correctly because the order of this bracket, sometimes they have to be bent because it will not allow the servo motor to open and close the power valves accordingly. We do check every single machine before it leaves, but that's not to say that it couldn't happen again. So if you have a problem where you're getting a code on the dash and it feels like it's bogging at high RPM, or it's bogging in general, that would certainly be the first place I check. Obviously you can call us and we'll get you sorted out, but always check that. So yeah, that's basically your whole engine and everything there. So I'm gonna quickly reassemble the sled and then we'll go over some of the switchwear, shocks, track, and that kind of thing here. So allow me to do that very quickly. So to put the hood back in, there's two tabs at the back that you're gonna wanna line up. So these two tabs are gonna go onto here. Now, push these sides in so we don't get caught. And now I'm just gonna push down on the nose cone. You hear click in. And then these side fasteners can go right back in. They're gonna do a little half turn once they find their home there. Half turn. Again. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find their receptacle there, but half turn, put it in. Now your side panels, in, slide it back. It's gonna clip right in. 1, 2, 3. And then same thing on this side. 1, 2, 3. And now your machine is all back together. And one thing I just realized is that I forgot to plug in that connector on the right-hand side of the vehicle to turn on your headlight and gauge. Just make sure you plug that in or they're not gonna work when you fire up the machine. So I forget it basically every time. It means you might as well, or maybe I'm just quite forgetful. So now, another thing I'll mention is that when you're putting these side panels on, they have to tuck into these corners. A lot of time when people don't know, they'll be out like that, and it doesn't give the machine a nice finish, right? Because that's sitting out. So before you put that in, tuck that into the corner, clip this up, and then it'll kind of lock into there. So there you are. Now, as I'm on the machine here, I'll go over some of the switchwear on the left-hand side. First of all, you've got your brake. You pull it, it's going to stop the machine, obviously. But there's a parking brake feature as well. So if I pull the brake back and flick it, now I've got a parking brake, so it will not allow the track to spin. This is if you're parked on a slope or if you're, in the back of the truck or a trailer. I would recommend setting the parking brake. To release it, all I'm going to do, I'm not going to touch that at all. Just pull back on the brake and it'll automatically release. Brake fluid right there. It's obviously full right now, but check that every so often. This button on your left-hand side is to control the display. So if you click this, it'll flip between mile an hour, RPM, and such and such. You can also use these buttons, but if you have your mitt on and you don't want to reach up there, you can just press these and it'll change the screen. If you have a Garmin G8 display and you have the ATAC suspension, this is what you will use to change between soft, medium, and hard. You will press this, it'll come up on the screen and say ATAC suspension, and then you can go front and back to go soft, hard, medium, however you want the suspension to be set up. Now down here, headlight. So if I click this, sorry, the headlight's always on. This is a high beam. If you click that, your high beam is going to be on. Hand warmers. So you have 4 settings, 1, 2, 3, 4 for hot and cold, or for how warm you want it. And same exact thing on your thumb warmer. It'll display at the bottom of the screen, or on the G8 it'll be at the bottom as well. This is your kill switch. So if you're running the machine, this is being up in the up position. If you're stopping the machine, it should be in the down position. This is your throttle. You hit it and you're going to move forward, quite obviously. Now moving down here, this is where your key would go. So there's one position, turn it on, and that'll allow the machine to run. The machine will not run with it off. Helmet plug, so you can plug your helmet into there if you have a heated visor. And then this is your tether. Your machine is also not going to start unless you have the tether fully plugged in. So plug the tether in, turn the key on, make sure your kill switch is on. And then to start the machine, if you have electric start, which most of the 858s do, shy of the RXC that you can spec it without it, hit that button and the machine will fire right up. Another alternative, if your battery's dead or you just want to, you can pull the machine. So you can pull this and the machine will fire up. To go into reverse when the machine's running, click this, the machine will shut off and start in reverse, being a 2-stroke motor. And the machine will now run in reverse. It will also beep and it'll display on your screen saying that you are in reverse. To stop the machine, there's a couple options. You can turn the key off or you can hit the kill switch to turn it off. That's all the switchware up here that you really have to worry about. The RXC comes equipped with handguards. You can adjust them by undoing the bolts and just moving them back and forth. Fuel will go in here, run 91 octane in all of them. Do not run regular or you will get a detonation code and the machine will not perform at its peak. Moving back here, this is your seat. It's super easy to take off one of those fasteners, lift up, pull back, and you now have access to your battery where you can boost it if you don't want to pull it, or change the battery if need be a couple years down the line. To put the seat back on, line up, there's a hole in the front of the seat, line it up with that button there, press down and then slide it forward. Make sure you're locked in at the front, a little bit tricky to do with one hand, but then push down and you can then get this pin back in the back of the seat there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do it with one hand or not, but you gotta find, I probably won't be able to do it with one hand, but find the fastener. It's a little quarter turn, and then the seat will click right back in. At the back, you have your attach brackets, so you can put 2-up seats on these bags, all that sort of thing. So if I open them, you can then put a bag in there, click it in, and it's locked in. Now moving on to the track. Not really much you got to take note of here other than your sliders. Check them every couple of seasons. Make sure that there is still material on them. If not, you'll probably burn out your track and it's a lot more expensive than changing the sliders. In the skid, in this unit, you do have the Fox QS3s, so you can click them 1, 2, 3 for different firmness settings. You have one at the back, one at the front. So you can adjust those if you want the back to be firmer or softer. Your springs at the back here can also be adjusted as well. By putting a socket on this and turning it, it'll change how much load is actually on the spring. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but the spring up in the skid. So if you want it stiffer or looser, you spin that accordingly and just make sure both sides are matching, because it will feel funny if you do this side and not the other one. Now moving up to the front of the machine, same thing, you have the Fox QS3s. So to change the stiffness, you would just flick this and it'll go from softer to harder. And on the RXC, you can also adjust the rebound, which is simply how fast the shock will return to its resting position. Other than that, incredible machine. Just wanted to give you a walkthrough on how everything works. If you have any questions, you know exactly where to find us. 1330 Dugald Road, or give us a call at 204-237-7272. Thank you.